Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and despite this being a cool down week, there's a really big story we gotta talk about, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. I've talked before about weeks that feel deceptive on the charts, where it might seem like there's not much going on, but there is a bigger story, and this is one of those weeks. Sure, predictable new number one, and we're in the aftermath of an album bomb that's unfortunately taking its sweet goddamn time exiting the Hot 100, but there's an asterisk you can attach to its longevity beyond just the ever so charming fandom, and it's a lot bigger than any just one artist. Indeed, if there's a story about 2024 that's not getting enough coverage, it's the ongoing standoff between TikTok and Universal Music Group, where the latter has been nudging back their release dates of their larger acts to not totally kneecap their promotion, which they can't do on TikTok anymore. Unfortunately, the standoff's not breaking, because as of this morning, the publishing division of Universal is now pulling their catalog of songwriters off of TikTok as of March 1st, and for some it's already started, which casts a much broader net, and it's probably going to hit acts who are signed to other labels, but their writers or their publishing are held by Universal. Estimates run that this is the majority of the music industry, and we won't really be able to identify who everyone even is impacted until it happens. It's not normally well circulated who owns whose publishing. Thus far, it's also not stopping TikTok. But the knock-on effect is that any Universal act is going to be struggling for viral promo for existing music while being held back on future major releases, and it could spill over to their writers as well, who might be on other labels. So let's consider how it's impacted the top 10, with the acknowledgement that the publishing knock-on effect has not yet been fully realized. And you don't have to look too far. New number one, as predicted, Texas Hold'em by Beyonce, signed to Parkwood, Columbia, under Sony. Now granted, when her sales streaming and surging radio are already in action, it's not surprising, but nobody's gonna turn down her advantage. And she beat out Lovin' On Me by Jack Harlow at number 2. He saw streaming losses in a really inconsistent week on radio, but he's dominant there, and he's also signed to Atlantic, under Warner. That gives him insulation. Then we got Lose Control by Teddy Swims rising to number 3. Really good streaming and sales week, plus fresh radio push, plus being under Warner, it's got some tangible traction, especially leaping over Carnival by Kanye West and Ty Dolla $ign featuring Rich the Kid and Playboi Carti. Now, it only fell down to number 4 because its streaming is ridiculous, the radio's not touching it, but Kanye is now on his own record deal and publishing, so he and this album have some insulation from Def Jam, which is under Universal. Next, we got Beautiful Things by Benson Boone at number 5, who finally has some radio momentum to match his streaming, but he is kind of getting beaten on the margins there. And again, he's under Warner as well. He's protected. Then next up we got Snooze by SZA at number 6. Kind of wavering success on the radio. Streaming is mostly stable, and as much as I hate RCA these days, RCA's under Sony, and for now she would be protected, but apparently Universal has a hand in her publishing, so with Snooze already on the decline, it might just get faster. Now, Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift at number 7, it's the anomaly. She's on Republic, that's under Universal. But she's also Taylor Swift. She can ride out radio inertia here, but it does open up a small window for Greedy by Tate McRae up to number 8, where she had a shockingly decent radio week and pickups on streaming, and what do you know, she's on RCA as well. Then there's I Remember Everything by Zach Bryan and Casey Musgraves down at number 9. I mean, he's on Warner and thus he's got some level of protection, but radio has never taken to the song, blame Music Row, and the streaming actually did take a dip. Finally, Agora Hills by Doja Cat's creeping back into the top 10 because her radio hasn't gone away, and again, she's on RCA. That matters. I'm not saying it's the only impact on chart position now or going forward, but we're looking at a sizable majority of all these acts in the top 10 that have no Universal connection, especially up-and-coming acts, compared to around this time last year, where over half the acts had a Universal connection. Now this takes us to our losers and dropouts, where obviously the big story is the somewhat delayed collapse of Vultures 1. And again, so much of the movement of the Hot 100 is based on larger consumer trends and factors. I I don't want to make out that the label connection and that the only notable songs leaving the Hot 100 this week, Different Round Here by Riley Green and Luke Combs, and We Don't Fight Anymore by Carly Pearce featuring Chris Stapleton. I mean, they're both tied to Big Machine. That rolls up under Universal, especially as about half of Kanye and Ty Dolla $ign's album bomb entries fell off and many fell back, but you could argue that more of them should have at least seen bigger losses encroaching the competition. Not that they didn't see losses, as Burn went to 53, Fuck Something hit to 57, Back to Me hit 59, Vultures with Lil Durk and Bump J hit 85, Do It hit 94, and Talking with Northwest hit 96. But outside of those, Noah Kahan saw the expected losses with Forever falling off the debut to 73, and Northern Attitude with Hosier at 100. Not for nothing, there is a Universal connection there, as well as for Standing Next to You by Jungkook losing all of its momentum at 81. Although you could probably tie some of that in with Usher's expected losses, with Yeah with Lil Jon and Ludacris somehow lasting a second week at 47, and Good with Summer Walker and 21 Savage at 49. Finally, 16 Carriages by Beyonce dropped off the debut to 55. I'd chalk this up to no larger radio push and streaming and sales falling back. It's very clearly a B-side to Texas Hold'em anyway, and it's a weaker song. I get it. Now this takes us to our returns and gains, where again, I don't want to make this all about Universal standoff with TikTok, but come on, in our returns, it's very telling that the majority are not affiliated with Universal. Home by Good Neighbors at 84, it's independent. So is Wondering Why by the Red Clay Strays at 99, there's a tie there to 30 Tigers. Oklahoma Smoke Show by Zach Bryan at 92, under Warner. So is Where It Ends by Bailey Zimmerman at 98. And Sensational by Chris Brown featuring DeVito and Loj, he's tied to RCA. The two exceptions here are Worth It by Offset and Don Toliver at 95, Capitol Motown, both of them are owned by Universal, and Wildflowers and Wild Horses by Lainey Wilson, back up big to 78. She's on Broken Bow, that's distributed by Universal. But then you take a look at the radio numbers. Both the songs have already been shipped to radio. They're doing well. That's some insulation from needing TikTok for promo, as they're both songs from last year that have establishment momentum. Where all this really will show up is our gains, most of which you can chalk up to rebounds from the album bomb, so again, this is not an all-purpose answer, but there's also nearly always an explanation. Yes and by Ariana Grande back at 11s because of that Mariah Carey remix, which you can argue really should have done better. Rich Baby Daddy by Drake, SZA, and Sexy Red got to 31 based off the video, and the pickups for One of the Girls by The Weeknd, Jenny, and Lily Rose Depp at 58, Murder on the Dance Floor by Sophie Ellis Bextor at 63, and You Broke My Heart by Drake at 64. I would chalk those up maybe just positional shifts rather than their consistent viral strength where TikTok really impacts them, especially if they already have some radio. And speaking of which, Nashville radio is a really big factor for stability when you see pickups for Truck Bed by Hardy at 33, World on Fire by Nate Smith at 46, Burn It Down by Parker McCollum at 48, Man Made a Bar by Morgan Wallen featuring Eric Church at 54, 23 by Chase Beckham at 62, and I Can Feel It by Kane Brown at 69. About half of these have some ties to a Universal affiliated label. It's not an exact science, I'll say it again, but you're also talking about acts who have establishment traction and Music Row's ties to radio. They would still use TikTok as a cushion, but not much more beyond that. Outside of it though, Soak City Do It by 310 Babies up to 72, tied to Empire, which despite being an indie label, could take a flying leap for their extra legal approach to copyright that wouldn't remotely hold up in court. They know it. And Praise Ya in the Moonlight by YG Marley up to 39, which has streaming momentum and is on an independent project. The one big outlier is Feather by Sabrina Carpenter. There is a Universal connection. She saw a boost to 29, but she's also not relying on streaming at all, just radio. Now it's going to be a problem for her if she's looking for that next boost to get over the top. I don't even like Sabrina Carpenter, and I feel for her here. If I'm her management after years of trying to get her mainstream traction and she's finally seeing success, this is probably infuriating, but at least for now she's got some stability. She doesn't need TikTok. But this takes us to all of our new arrivals. And nearly all of them, the Universal TikTok tension is a factor in where they landed, maybe more than what you expect. So let's start off with number 93, To Name by Fuerza, Regida. No te conozco, mami, mami, se me olvidó tu name. Wouldn't it be just our luck that we're starting off with an act on Sony Music Latin who probably will see a boost for Universal's absence and also makes music I really don't like. And this is exactly what you would expect from Fuerza Regida. Tinny, rattling guitars that are trying for some sort of binaural balance in both channels and utterly failing at it, really flatly produced vocal overlays, and a strikingly pissy song about slagging off an ex through a string of insults, hooking up with other women very openly, and saying that he would forget her name, which I'm not sure I remotely believe given his performance. And I get that there's a place for songs that are this obnoxious, but I normally prefer them to be a lot better produced. It's not the worst Fuerza Regida song because there's not that much staccato farting horns. That's not saying much though. Not good. Skip it. Number 89, Psycho CEO by Yeat.
Yeah, my diamonds out. Yeah, my money long. Yeah, my money talk. Heard it's Tyler's guy. Heard you trying to corrupt winners, wanna know who you are.
So now onto the meat of things, and the artist I would argue got screwed more by the Universal TikTok standoff than I think many of you realize, because Yeat built viral traction on TikTok. He's a streaming first artist with a younger audience, so when despite more tangible groundswell and sales, even some critical praise I don't think anyone expected, his streaming numbers underperformed. That seemed weird, but then you realize he signed a Capitol, subsidiary of Universal, likely blunted any viral spread on TikTok. And this is coming from somebody who doesn't even particularly like Yeat or this song. The increased budget definitely shows up on all the spacey, oily gloss drizzled all over the blocky beat that's been cleaned up considerably. It seems to be a play for broader accessibility, but it really starts testing my patience with all those tinny squeals. And it's not like there's much in the way of redeemable content or bars here, putting aside how tactless it is to embrace the whole Psycho CEO branding in 2024, especially alongside some sort of future dystopia. I don't even get much of a sense of menace from this guy when a lot of the flexing is very by the numbers, with the most notable line being Mr. Worldwide on the coat. That's Pitbull's thing. You don't have a quarter of his charisma. Yeah, it feels like a more polished version of Yeat. It's not exactly promising, and it's still not my thing. Let's move on. Number 82, Bittersweet by Gunna.
Money don't uphold so much that we sacrifice. Life a roller coaster, turns cold and back high. My day's been a blur, can't get the dirt out my eye.
You know, after Gunna's project last year saw more traction than I think anyone could have expected, I was curious what his next step would be, especially as he's still on 300 under Warner. That gives him a little flexibility in these times. Granted, it's not a lot of help for him because of how many other rappers have beef with him or just refuse to work with him in the fallout of the YSL trial, which at this point, I don't think any testimony from Gunna is seriously shifting the needle on that god-awful circus. So instead, we have this. A rather sad song where Gunna reflects on all the success he's gotten at the cost of friendships and label connections that he wants to make right, where he's choosing not to diss them directly even as they diss him and reference him for clout chasing. And if anything, Gunna's performance actually really comes through well here. I'm not crazy about how often his flow feels a little bit sloppy in its bar construction, but there is an exhaustion to every remark that feels kind of tangible, where he genuinely feels he wants to rebuild, but he also knows it's not likely. And I like the production a lot too. The somber electric guitar and bass, the spare cymbals around the snap that actually sound really nice. This is a song that's built for brooding and it lands really effectively. I still think it's goddamn weird that Gunna somehow found an emotional core at his lowest and he's now making his most evocative music of his career, but yeah, this is really damn good. Give it a shot. Number 61, Contigo by Karol G and Tiesto.
Contigo, ey, contigo, contigo, ey, contigo, contigo, ey. No quiero vida sin él.
So now we've reached the big exception to the whole Universal TikTok conversation. The big debut that feels the most out of place. Karol G's on Interscope. That rolls up to Universal. She got a solid debut. What the hell happened? Well, I'd say there are two caveats. One, she's an international act who saw even better traction on the global charts, and like it or not, as global as TikTok is, the UMG fight feels more concentrated on the English-speaking battlegrounds. And two, Without this TikTok fight, I argue she probably should have debuted higher. Karol G got 2 album bombs last year that everyone seems to ignore. She's a bona fide star who does not get as much attention as she probably should. So yeah, I was excited to hear this, and I probably shouldn't have been, because the very obvious sample interpolations, they've gone global. In this case, a very obvious melodic flip of Leona Lewis's Bleeding Love, paired with the wiry synth bass and sharper percussion around a pitch-shifted drop from Tiesto. And I don't know, maybe this is some of my nostalgia talking, but I remember really liking how visceral Bleeding Love felt, and the slicker, prettier performance feels like a bit of a misstep. It's not helped by the song playing the exact same lyrical arc as well, a love and breakup that she's taken really hard, because I'm then reminded of Bleeding Love, the better version of this melody, and this just isn't it. It's not precisely bad, but if it winds up underperforming in the weeks to come, not sure I would complain. Just saying. Number 51, End of Beginning by Dijo.
Another version of me, I was in it. I wave goodbye to the end of beginning.
So if you're not at all familiar with this guy, here's the primer. This is Joe Keery. He's an actor made famous thanks to Stranger Things. He's seen some additional roles, but he's also had a modest career as a musician. First in the psych rock band Post Animal, and now as a solo act who's put out 2 albums in 2019 and 2022. Now this is a song that was on that second album, distributed by AWOL, so he's got some insulation here too, and, well, you know what? Based off some of those synths and the underlying groove, paired with his very careful vocal overdubs, the vibe I'm getting is Tame Impala meets Harry Styles doing his Bowie impression. Now that's not a bad thing per se. The 80s synths are a bit off kilter to balance against the steady groove, where the drums feel a little bit underweight, but as the guitars layer onto the hook, it does build some brittle swell that kind of fits for the lyrical themes of growth and transformation. And then once the bridge seemed primed to really explode, a solo would have been perfect there. It strips back to the chorus, and I'm left distinctly unsatisfied. A good crescendo, and it just wasn't getting used. I don't know. I hear the potential. I get why it might have caught some viral traction. I just feel like it could have been more. That's all. Number 42, Breathe by Yeat.
That bitch need to breathe. Nah, fuck that bitch, need to feel it. Make me so damn mad, make me feel it. I will never give you time to breathe. I will never give a fuck if it breathe. I don't really give a fuck about you. You need to chill, you need to breathe.
Before I go on with what's probably Yeat's best hope to stick around on the charts, let me emphasize one thing with this whole universal TikTok feud. The acts I'm covering on the Hot 100 right now, they're probably going to be just fine in the end. And while it does legitimately suck that a bunch of executives dick-waving is going to stymie some chart momentum, folks who chart at all, they are a fraction of the music industry, and those signed to UMG and all the subsidiaries. Ergo, I'm not particularly interested in a grudge that somebody might have against TikTok as a platform, or on the flip side, any fandom nonsense, when this is a systemic issue that's got the potential to wreck a lot of unfortunate artists who signed to a major label with hope, only to get lost in this tide. Even as I don't think that Yeat making a Travis Scott ripoff here is all that interesting, from the oily, pulsating groove, fizzy percussion, and crushing bass, to the deeper and more aggressive flow and ad-libs. Now granted, I think I like this more than most Travis Scott songs these days. Yeah, the content is once again utterly disposable as Yeat continues to play into his villain arc, but the pitch-shifted warble around the post-chorus is actually pretty sticky as a melody, and most importantly, there is a sense of tempo, where Yeat doesn't get bogged down in his own wallowing. The song's actually got a bit of muscle to it. I'm not gonna call it great, but it's probably the most I liked a Yeat song that I've heard thus far, and if that new album has more like this, I haven't heard it yet, well, now I'm even more annoyed with the meddling at the very top beyond everyone's control. That sucks. Across the board. Number 32, Whatever She Wants by Bryson Tiller.
CC Gucci, Hippo, take her whatever she want. She pissed me off somehow, she still get whatever she want. Talking about her nails, I'm finna nail her as her home. Hit it in the shower, made her tell me what she want. Like I'm singing Maze, I made her tell me what she want.
See, this is the other side of the feud. You got Bryson Tiller under RCA. He hasn't had a charting hit in the United States since 2020, despite that string of mixtapes the past 4 years. Coincidentally, he had a song go viral late last year, and now this debut that's frankly way better than one might expect, especially as he really hit the ground running on streaming. Now granted, the song being pretty decent does help matters. The elegant sample loop behind the popping twinkle and the knock of the percussion, it is a pretty solid groove and a little bit better mastered than I would normally expect. I especially like that hammering percussion that comes in behind the first verse. And you know what? Bryson Tiller can handle a trap flow and ad-libs pretty effectively. There's less singing than you might expect, but he sounds pretty engaged on the track, borderline exasperated at himself that this girl can effectively get whatever she wants out of him before the song turns into a lot of brand name porn. But I do think the hook is really sticky. There's some tangible swagger here. Look, I'm no big Bryson Tiller fan. This is pretty good. I don't mind it. And finally, number 27, Training Season by Dua Lipa.
Feels like a rodeo, knows just how to take control. When I'm vulnerable, he's straight talking to my soul. Conversation overload, got me feeling vertigo.
I'm not sure how to feel about Dua Lipa's most recent singles rollout. Houdini is a really damn good song, but it's not really been one I seek out. It's very solid in the lane, and I find more to like with it with more listens, but it's not really rising to her top tier. But hey, I had that same issue with Don't Start Now. It really took until Physical to really pull me in. Apparently now this was the track that was planned as the big comeback single, but some questionable issues around the music video pushed it into that second single slot, and that might have been smart, because this isn't quite convincing me either. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot that I like about the song. Dua Lipa herself sounds great. The groove has a lot of brittle acoustic swing that would almost be giving me kind of spaghetti western rollick if it had a little bit more muscle to it. And Kevin Parker's synth swell and blending in the production behind her really pops effectively after the post-chorus and during the bridge as those pianos cascade. And you know what? I actually really like the content here too. I mean, sometimes you're looking for someone to hook up with or to fall for. You don't want there to be a training session to find that right groove. You want the chemistry to hit the ground running. I definitely feel for that. But if you're gonna take that lyrical arc, I don't know, maybe have a hook that doesn't feel so brittle and flighty, that can actually pay off that crescendo on the bridge and actually hit like a ton of bricks. This is a song that probably should go as hard as Physical, but the approach to the hook, which feels so thin, it was the same as the issue I had with Break My Heart, and that is a compositional misstep. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot to like here. It's probably gonna grow on me, but I also know Dua Lipa has the formula to make songs like this over the top. And while you might think her being on Warner would give her a little bit more boost or a longevity, guess whose publishing is tied up at Universal, which neuters her promo too. Well, I guess at the end here, I could give it the best of the week, but let's be real, that's not promo that moves the needle here. Honorable mention is going to go to Bittersweet by Gunna. Kind of caught me a little by surprise, but I actually really did like it. Worst of the week, To Name by Fuerza Regida, was Psycho CEO by Yeat as a dishonorable mention. My sympathies will only go so far here. It happens. Next week, look, again, I just don't know. We're going to be heading into choppy waters the more songs get yanked off of TikTok and denied that promotion. It's going to screw with streaming, and we're going to need to take a couple weeks to hear the full impact. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.